The following discussion is not necessarily the views of all involved. The goal is to start open and honest discussion in the Christian worldview. Like all things, weigh what you hear with what you know and join us in our pursuit for the truth. Enjoy the podcast.
You just wanted to talk about eugenics.
I just wanted something fun.
That's not fun, Colton. That's cool, but he's not the inventor of white people.
No, Jacob is not the inventor of white people.
He's just a jacked 77-year-old man.
This story's wild, guys.
Dude looks like Liver King.
He came, he saw.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Second Rate Saints podcast. I'm one of your hosts here, Caleb, and to my left is...
I'm Joel, and to my left is...
I'm Colton, and to my left is...
I am Joshua, and to my left is...
Background to me, Caleb. You may have noticed we have new audio equipment, so this is very exciting. However, we still stayed in the same order, even though we're in a different setup, so I like that. Joel pointed that out. But Joel, what are we doing on the internet?
We're creatures of habit. And I think that a habit you should incorporate into your everyday life is looking at the secondRateSaints.com material we've been putting out. We're getting to the point now where we have a lot of reoccurring listeners that are, nice enough to make us a part of their week, and we hope that you're one of them. And first of all, I appreciate your support. Like, we've been starting this for a while now. We've been, uploading consistently, and we've seen some good feedback from it. So
it's so
thank
cool.
you to our fans.
Yeah, some
if
great,
we have any.
great comments and talks that we've had with individuals. It's been really nice.
Yeah, good fan interaction and things like that. Fan doesn't sound like the right word, but we'll figure something out.
It feels weird.
It feels a little weird. I don't know if it's true. But we are on our socials. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, and we're trying to post more often, be more interactive. And again, we love hearing comments and emails. You can email us at secondRateSaints@gmail.com, and you can find everything we're doing at secondRateSaints.com. Yeah, thanks for that. For our What Have You Read this week, we're going to have Josh coming to us with, what book, Josh? What do you got there?
What have I read?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read this short book, it's 120 pages, called Rediscover Church.
Okay.
Why the Body of Christ is Essential, by Colin Hanson and Jonathan Lehman. Colin Hanson is the Vice President of Content and Editor-in-Chief of the Gospel Coalition.
Oh, really?
Okay.
He's a pretty big guy. And he wrote this book as a response of the lack of members going to physical church due to the COVID-19 epidemic.
Okay.
So we, as a safety mechanism, which was a good idea, turned the church onto an online service so that people could attend from home. It was the fact that we had the technology was great, and he acknowledges that. But now that the pandemic's over, not all those people went back to church, or many members will say, well, I can just catch it up on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Right. I won't go today. I won't go today because, I'm going to take the day easy.
Yeah.
I'm going to rest up.
Right? I got to take my Sabbath, man.
Yeah. Which is ironic saying that. And so his tagline is, a Christian without a church is a Christian in trouble. Because when somebody becomes a Christian and they receive the Holy Spirit, they are the church. Yeah. And the whole point of being a Christian is two of the rules: love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So there's a communal aspect to the mission of Christ, the kingdom of God, the church, the body of believers, the fellowship.
I have a question.
Yes.
If someone publishes a book saying, here's why you should go to church.
Yep.
There's only two scenarios in which people buy those books, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
One, they're interested because they already go to church and they're a good, solid, strong Christian. That's awesome. The other is someone buys the book and then gives it to someone who isn't going to church and is like, hey, read this.
Yes.
How does that book come off? Like, what is it targeted at?
He doesn't tell the reader to go to church.
Explicitly?
Yes.
But implicitly?
No.
Really?
What he's saying is he's making the argument for why church is what a believer does. So he's not saying that this is a book for those who don't go to church and need to go to church, and here's why.
Right.
He's saying, hey, church, we need to make it more of a priority to make it known to people that the church is
Okay.
not just an add-on to the Christian faith. It is the Christian faith. And so as a book, it's not reaching out to those people.
Okay.
It's reaching out to the church to make it more of a message that we present, not just, hey, this is where you will find a sermon. And he goes through a bunch of things, like he describes what is a church, who belongs to the church, and the answer to that is everybody that has ever been baptized, saved. Do you really need to gather? Yes. Where do you learn about God? Where do you get taught the gospel?
Podcast.
The disciples.
Oh.
Wrong answer.
Oh, I was so confident.
You got a bit of a second-rate answer there.
They're good supplements, but the place where you go to be with the fellowship and to learn from God in the way that He has designed is the church,
Right.
I thought it was the Bible.
which is taught at
Yeah,
the church.
There you go.
I thought it was the Eucharist.
Is joining necessary? He does the whole like, do you need to actually be a part of a church to do the church thing that is required as he's talking about it? And it's like, well, church membership as a thing today is not a thing, not the same as it was back in the day. So being a part of the church, being a part of the fellowship, being a part of the service, being a part of the chain of discipleship, that's what matters.
Okay.
So
That's
if
cool.
that means you become a member, then yeah, you should.
Now,
Yeah.
Can I ask you another question?
Yes.
Because I like asking you these questions. Because I try to ask it every episode. How bad's the cover?
I love the cover.
Really?
Yeah.
It looks like Where's Waldo?
No, it looks like those little kids mats with the cars.
Oh, dude, those were awesome.
Exactly. That's what it reminded me of.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
Reminds
It
me.
Totally does.
No,
It's a Picasso
your
painting.
review for this book is actually on the book reviews
Yes.
on the website. You gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Why?
3 out of 5 or 3.5 out of 5?
I have it right here. Right.
That's
Why
now.
are
a
we
big
doing halves? Why don't we just
There
do
is
it
a big
10
difference?
then if we're doing halves?
I think it was
You know?
Because I can only put 5 stars underneath.
Really?
on the
Yeah.
website.
That's a weird limitation.
Well, no, it's not really like I could
you
do.
have to pay extra.
No.
I
Only-
could
if
do
only
more,
we
but
did.
you know how like cramped that would look. Anyway, it's 3 out of 5. That's what you gave it.
Okay.
Only we use
Yes.
halos.
I believe a lot of that was the cover. No, no.
We are
what it-
judging books by their covers here.
I do 100%. It judges whether I buy them and put them on my cover. My cover.
What?
My bookshelf.
Like that you have cupboards just full of books.
So it's good. It's surface. But it was a really good reminder. What it really was a book that reminded me that I needed to go to church, or the function of church was like I could have heard one sermon on that. So it was like, does it really require it being a book? Everything said in here is great. It's
Okay.
awesome. And I love the cover, and it's great. And I would hand this out. This is the kind of thing I would hand out to a youth who's asking, why is church a big deal?
Why do I have to go to church all the time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be like, hey, here's the only book that's coming to my mind describing to you why you should go to church. Yeah.
Cool.
I have a question.
Yes.
This book sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Like you said, it is more of it's fairly simple,
Yes.
easy to digest, something that you would say give a youth.
Yeah.
If someone has been, say, not pushed out, but demoralized by church, whether it's because of the COVID stuff or if it's things that's happening in their church, is this something that would help them, or is it kind of like, oh, they would just pass along on it, and that would be more of an apologetic work that you would give them?
Like, do you mean specifically like somebody who has been burned out because
Say
awful
their-
stuff has happened at the
yes,
church?
Say their church split because someone,
Hmm.
like pastor caught in adultery or something like that, and took half the church with them, and now this person's like, oh man,
Yeah.
I hate
Best
church.
case
Church
scenario
sucks.
over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be
Yeah.
that would be one of the cases where you would need to talk with that person in a pastoral sense,
Right.
On like helping them recover like their
Mm.
their identity as a Christian in the church.
Mhm.
not like because they probably know all this.
Okay, so it is
It's
very much just the.
they're just dealing with the issue that is at hand, which is how do I get over the fact that I lost my home? Like if it's a church that split and now they're going, I don't know if I can go to church. It's probably because they had deep relationships there.
Mhm.
They had a lot invested in that church,
Yep.
and because it split and people divided,
And just
it
demoralized.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like when your family gets into an argument, like that's deep, that certain members of the family don't talk to each other anymore.
I don't know if this analogy holds, or it might be even harder than it should be. But when the body of Christ fails, it makes you doubt the head.
Yes.
Sure.
Sure.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So this, if it's not meant for hurt, this book is more meant for apathy. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I mean, those are the two
reasons.
reasons
That's a good
in
distinction.
my mind.
Joel,
the two
that is a
reasons.
very astute observation.
Oh, thank you.
And I like that.
Yep.
If you're feeling apathetic and you don't
Then
want to go to
you're-
church,
You're in
read this
good
book.
company. I mean, hold on.
Read this book.
So
Or don't. Who cares?
I don't care.
if I'm getting you right, the missing 1.5 stars on your review are simply because of how surface level it is.
Because it's not a what it was it was a good reminder.
Okay.
And I don't think a good reminder is worth 5 stars.
Interesting.
Is it? Okay. Interesting.
So when we use words like simple and basic, when we are talking about books that we're reviewing, what would you consider the difference between simple and basic? Because when you said simple, I thought you were going to say basic.
Yeah, what I mean by simple is the argument is the church forms out of Jesus sending his disciples to go make more disciples.
Yeah.
And so he says, hey, go be in the church because that's what the church did. Like that's what the people of God did.
Okay.
So it's a very simple laid out argument. Hey, this is what the disciples did. This is what everybody's done since then. This is the mission. This is the Great Commission. This is the kingdom of God. And so it was really simple. What is the church? Okay, if that's the church, well, where do you go to learn the Bible? Well, you go to learn the Bible from a pastor at a church, from a sermon or a Bible study or a group. And so it was very simple, like answers. It wasn't these deep theological ruminations of faith.
It's meant for lay people.
Sure, yeah.
Last question. If the book is saying like this is where you go to learn, does it say why, like say a podcast or looking online or simple commentaries aren't enough to learn?
He gets into faith. Learning about God is not head knowledge. Learning about God is as an act of faith is an incorporated corporate act where the body is steeped in the word, like it's given the word, but it necessitates outward action with the rest of the body.
Like going to church, it itself is somewhat of an act of faith.
Yeah, it's part of learning the word is response in worship, response in praise, listening as the body, praying as the body, worshiping as the body. And this personal study, like from a podcast or listening to a sermon online, is good, but it's not what we're called to.
Okay.
It's not the best. It's not the mission. Those are good supplements. So like you wouldn't live on a multivitamin.
Right.
But everything in there is good for you.
Yeah, you would eat food and have the multivitamin.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, corporate worship's super important as well. Like we overlook that a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I really liked talking about this book. This book's great,
Mhm.
but this whole faith started off in the beginning of the Bible with a few characters called Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we've done Abraham and Isaac in our podcast series, and Joseph.
And Joseph's also
In
that.
brackets.
And we are covering Jacob today.
Mhm.
And who is covering Jacob today?
I'm covering Jacob today.
Oh, hi, Colton.
Hey, Colton, didn't see you there.
Well, aren't we all covering Jacob today?
I was just gonna stay silent the whole time.
Thanks, Caleb.
Well, you did a great job of that.
You asked some questions.
Anyway,
All right. Today we're covering the third of the Patriarchs in our Patriarchs series. We covered Abraham a few weeks ago, covered Isaac 2 weeks ago, and now we're talking about,
Esau.
well, yes, we will be talking about Esau,
Okay.
but specifically why he's not supposed to be the firstborn, even though he is.
Oh, yes.
Jacob, the usurper, took
Oh.
took his birthright and now is the patriarch that of which Israel is descended from. He is also technically the last patriarch because from him the 12 tribes come. So he is the last of the originators. We throw Joseph in next week. We'll be talking about him because he is kind of a really important figure in all of this, despite technically not being one of the patriarchs themselves.
And also, where else would we put Joseph? We might never get a chance to talk about him if we don't put him in the
exactly.
Patriarchs.
When we talk about coats, that's when we're going to do it.
Oh, when we do our jacket episode.
I love referring to the robe of many colors as a jacket.
Well,
It's kind of more of a pullover, actually.
It's a
what
poncho.
if we get to heaven and we look at it, it's just like a plaid flannel?
No, it's one of those like Mexican blankets.
Josh
with
will
the
see
whole
4
feather in the
colors.
middle.
A poncho?
Like like the the good, the bad, and the ugly. Clint Eastwood's
Yeah,
character
it's
wears
a
like
poncho,
a poncho
yeah.
over top of him,
Yeah.
and it's got like the striped,
You
like
can buy
Mexican
them at
blankets.
every gas station or whatever.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, we're not quite there yet. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about the ponchos later on.
That's going to be a focus.
Yeah, it's important.
Traveling ponchos.
Big plot point. But I think that we should first, before we talk about Jacob and like what his place in the canon means and his legacy and stuff, that we should just talk about what happens in his life. A brief synopsis or an outline.
Cool.
Which would start with his birth.
No.
But not just his birth, because Jacob wasn't born as just himself.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
That's the worst way I could have worded that, but
Are you saying he has a twin?
he has a twin.
He came Esau.
Guys.
Anyway.
Joel, thank you for that.
It's pretty funny. Jacob is born after Esau, who is the firstborn and would be the one to inherit the legacy of Abraham, the legacy of Isaac.
However,
He sweeps the
that's all
leg.
true. However, before they're born,
Yeah.
God tells
Yes.
their mother that he's
Yes.
like, "Hey, the older's gonna serve the younger. Younger's gonna get the blessing, essentially."
Yeah,
And
one
like-
shall be stronger than the other.
Yeah.
One will the younger shall, or the older shall serve the younger.
Yeah, and so it's God's plan. But
Yeah,
we went a little
yeah.
bit into that last 2 episodes ago, I guess.
We'll talk about it a little bit later, but that same kind of idea is also put with Judah, with his son, Jacob's son. We're not there yet, but that same blessing kind of is placed on Judah as well.
Yeah.
But Esau is born as a incredibly hairy baby. It's described that he's basically wearing a sweater when he is born, which is interesting. I don't know exactly what that means. Like if he's born with there's a certain medical condition where you're born with hair all over your body and you can't stop.
Like an ape.
Like an
Look
ape.
it up.
Yeah,
It's the dog
But-
boy disease, isn't it?
it is the dog boy disease.
Mm.
But he could have also just been a massive lumberjack of a man.
As a baby?
As a baby,
His voice was real
When he grew up.
coming right out of the womb.
Are there really hairy kids? Is that just something you can... I don't-
Not really.
I don't think so.
I've never seen. Yeah, minor hair, but
It's
so Esau specifically being born with hair is kind of an interesting
the disease is called hypotrichosis.
hypotrichosis.
Hypertrichosis.
Hyper. Okay,
Yeah.
the opposite.
Yes.
And it's kind of
Interesting.
a blind assertion to put that on him, but
Yeah.
still.
No, I don't. There's no indication. Like we couldn't make the assumption that that's what
No,
that is.
No, I
No,
am
no.
making the assumption. I'm just wrong.
I think it's just an interesting point. There might be thematic elements tied in with that, but it could also just be he literally was just super hairy. But as he's being born, there's another hand holding his heel. Now, Rebecca was told that she was going to have twins by God, the angel of God, and so as Esau's coming out, one grabbing at his heel is another boy, a very skinny and small boy. I don't think it specifically says that he's like scrawny and wimpy,
No,
but
in
more
fact,
so
later
that he's
on,
just
it proves that he's actually super strong,
yeah.
which is interesting. Because, his mama's boy, then all of a sudden is just moving rocks off wells. I'm sorry, I'm getting heady.
Very cool.
Yeah. But
Jacob's the ladder, so he said.
he is the latter. That is true. Because Esau was born bright red, he is called Esau, which basically means the red one, if I remember.
That's kind of cool.
And
Let's look it up.
This guy was born an Irish setter.
but Jacob means the one who grasps, or the usurper, the deceiver. Jacob the deceiver is usually what
Esau
it's
means
called.
hairy.
Does it?
Yep.
Oh,
I think there is a description of him being red somewhere.
it is. It's at his birth, which is why I thought it was.
I mean, most
That's
babies
why.
come out red, though, so...
Yep. It also ties in with the next story, but Jacob being born after him, grabbing onto his heel, is kind of a symbolic idea that he's going to be pulling after his brother. He's going
His
to try to take
alternate
from him.
name, Edom, means red.
It does.
That's
Which is also it's described, kind of given to him when Jacob takes his birthright, which we'll get to. Jacob is born afterwards, which means that he is the younger. He is not supposed to inherit all of Isaac's stuff. Isaac at this point is kind of an interesting character, but it should also be known that Abraham would be 160 at this time.
15 years left.
He still has 15 years left. It's not said Jacob and Esau are not said to have any interaction with Abraham whatsoever. But the fact that he's born in his camp, that he's born as his grandson, he probably had some interaction with him.
Yeah.
Although
Just not
to
necessary
what
to
extent?
the story. Yeah. It
Yeah.
doesn't appear as though the narrator cares.
It
Because
does
it's not
matter.
necessary to either one's story.
But moving on from his birth, their kids, Esau becomes an amazing hunter. He's going out hunting. There's a bit of a tie with the hunting idea of Esau being kind of not reckless, but doesn't really care too much about his birthright, even in the idea that he's a hunter.
Yeah, well, their whole family is shepherds.
Yes, they already
mhm.
have everything they have. They don't need to hunt.
Yeah.
So the fact that he goes out to hunt might allude to the fact that he doesn't take his legacy seriously, or his predecessors as seriously.
He doesn't take his predecessors. He doesn't take his, let's say, familial cultural thing.
Yep.
Which then kind of, at least this is my thought, is it foreshadows him just taking. He takes a Canaanite wife and two. It starts with an H. He has 3 wives, 2 Hittite wives, and then 1 Canaanite wife. After Jacob runs away. So he just doesn't care about necessarily his family's culture and his.
I've heard the comparison between Jacob and Esau, that Jacob is supposed to represent civility, and Esau is the archetypical wild child that is raised by the wilderness, kind of thing.
I've
in a
heard
similar way to Cain and Abel. So are they playing with these themes of those who grow to harvest and those who kill to feed? Right.
The 2 brothers is probably
Interesting.
just based on the fact that there's 2 brothers,
Yeah.
and the older is the bad one, so to speak.
Yeah, but how far can that analogy be read upon?
Yeah.
Are these
How many
bookends
ties?
of Genesis? Right? Because they happen almost in the same proximity to the end and the beginning of the book, right? So, time-wise, at least.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's enough to say our favorite word, a chiasm, but
Oh,
there could be
no,
some
no.
ties.
At the very best, it would be typology, but I don't even see that, to be honest with
I
you.
don't know.
But I have knee-jerk rejection problems. So
from all of the research
Yeah.
I did, I didn't see any connections between the two.
'Cause,
But it might be there. I actually
Bible
don't know.
Project guy mentions that.
Really
Tim
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
Regardless, Esau is kind of this wild child, like
Mhm.
Joel said, but Jacob is kind of the mama's boy, like Caleb said, and he tends to the flocks. He goes in the way of his father, and kind of like is more passive.
Yeah, it's interesting because it obviously, and we covered this a bit with Isaac.
Mhm.
Is it appears as though Isaac doesn't really care about the message God gave to his wife,
Yep.
and he wants to pass on his blessing to Esau, which would be the cultural tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And it would appear as though Esau, Isaac, and Rebecca, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. I'm just getting my
Yeah.
right because Rachel is Jacob's wife. Right, cool. It appears as though all of them knew that
Yes.
that was what Isaac was going to try to do, and like that was against what God had told Rebecca. It's when you put that knowledge in the backdrop, it kind of explains some of the weird motives, the blessing in secret, the weird
Yeah.
wordplay between the brothers when it's like, oh, father's going to give you the blessing. Oh, well, if you want this bowl of soup, give me a
Exactly.
blessing. And they're like, oh, whatever. He's going to give it to me anyway. Sure, I guess I'll give you my blessing.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
you
yeah.
know,
Esau comes home from hunting. He's starving. He's exhausted.
Mhm.
He's like, I'm gonna die. Hey, you've got some nice soup right there. Some red pottage is what they call it, and it apparently is really tasty.
Hmm.
Esau, basically demands from Jacob that he give it to him. Like, please, would you rather me die? Jacob says, if you give me your birthright, as in you give me whatever you would inherit from Isaac, and all of that comes with being the firstborn. If you give me that, I'll give you this simple soup.
it's all just over dramatic.
It's a little bit. And like you said, Esau kind of goes, yeah, sure, whatever. Doesn't really think about it too much and kind of just agrees and takes the soup. That's that story. Kind of just is there, but there's a reason why it's there. When it goes into the next one, which is Isaac is dying, he's going to pass on his legacy to Esau because he's the firstborn, and he's kind of resisting God.
Yeah, and he doesn't.
Somewhat.
He wants to do it secretly,
Yes,
where it's just the two of them.
in his house by himself in the dark.
So he knows as though this is not how this is not as God
Which-
wants it.
Yeah, because normally this would be done in the bright of the day in
Mhm.
front of the entire household. We talked a
Specifically
little
the
bit about
servants.
this.
Yeah,
in
specifically the servants normally.
Yep. Isaac.
That's more cultural, not biblical. But
Yeah. And so Rebecca learns of this. He's like, he's going to give it to Esau. Now's the time. I'm going to teach you how to cook, and you're going to give him his favorite food, and then you're going to go to him and receive the blessing instead. Basically pretending to be Esau. Jacob goes, that would never work. He's super hairy and big. I can't pass off as that. So he tapes some goat hair to himself and walks and makes the soup and then goes in, or makes the meal. I don't know.
Also,
What is?
it's lamb.
Is it lamb?
It's not game, which is
Mhm.
funny. It's not
Hmm.
like whatever Esau would have gotten.
Right.
And so, and it mentions that Isaac loves the meat that Esau captured, like
Yep.
hunts and then brings back. But he can't even tell the difference between the lamb prepared in the soup and
And the game.
Mhm.
the
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 deer
hair
or-
on or
yeah.
the fur on
Yeah.
on his
on
arms.
Jacob. And so he's just like, oh, he can't see, he can't taste, he can't feel. He's not doing well.
No.
Yeah, he's not really a major player, is he? In the story, he's just kind of there.
Yeah. But the thing is that this it is a bit deceptive. Again, Jacob the deceiver.
Yeah.
This is not the first time he deceives people, and won't be the last. It's not the first. It won't be the last. He sort of deceives him when he takes his birthright.
Yeah. What I found out interesting about that was using the IVP Bible background commentary was they mentioned that because he's staying out at the tents.
Yep.
The idea of him staying out at the tents is probably referring to the fact that as the one who stayed near the camp and did the shepherding business, he's supervising the shepherds, and the
Yep.
shepherds and the tents go out abroad away from the home tent.
Okay.
And so he's out supervising the shepherding business, doing what the family's supposed to be doing, not out hunting. Like that. And because he's in charge, it's up to him whether Esau is allowed to like come into the shepherding area.
Ah.
And so he allows him in, which means the other shepherds were witness to the deal.
Okay.
Oh,
Interesting.
cool thought. I don't know if I'm binding.
Well, if that is the case, it actually lends more credence to the reason why it would be included in the story. Because the idea isn't really as much that Jacob kind of steals the birthright from by dressing up as him. More that this is a roundabout way of getting what he already has through some light deception. Because Rebecca is the one who kind of takes it all on herself. She even says, like, I'm the one who's going to take full responsibility if he finds out. That kind of
but
stuff.
the blessing is his from when God said
Yeah.
when they were in the womb. So I don't think it's his because of the soup that they traded for
No,
the
I think
birthright.
that just makes it
Everybody-
legally like his. Like you have God's promise saying that that's what he's going to get. But now that Esau has given it up, by all right, it's all Jacob's. Now he
Maybe.
just has to claim it.
I guess okay, sure.
But every character acts as if in that moment Jacob is stealing it. Or
Yes.
else Rebecca wouldn't have him dress up. Esau wouldn't be angry years after when he came back.
Mhm.
Right? He still thought the birthright was his. That initial action is what makes him angry, not that he was sold it to him.
Yes.
Right? Because after this all happens, he has to flee.
Yeah.
So
I
I think the actual theft of the blessing happens in that moment, and I don't think it's justified by any of the things that come before it.
You think so?
And I think that the main point of the stew is not to show that Jacob is a better deceiver, but rather that Esau was never going to be responsible with what he was given to begin with.
That's true.
Yeah.
My thought has been more on it's revealing the family tension because they are not following God's plan, which was told to his mother Rebecca.
But in that same story, it says, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. Talking about God's relationship with them.
Yep.
Meaning that the point of the story doesn't even, it can't be that Jacob is stealing. It has to be something to shame Esau. Doesn't that make more sense to you? Or maybe I'm just...
There. I did a little bit of reading on the whole he hated because it's also used in I think I want to
Hosea.
say Hosea
Hosea and Romans.
and how it and Romans and the idea might be that because Jesus also uses the same things when he says those who hate their parents to follow me kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's less so this idea that you're actually supposed like that he hated him and more so that he's subject to the other, that he loves him more than the other.
Well, I mean,
And so this would go more into when Romans talks about it into election, more so into condemnation and salvation. Although election is tied with condemnation and salvation, of course.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless, whether or not he did steal in the eyes of this, it doesn't seem that God condemns it. God does not condemn Jacob for this ever.
No.
Nor does it really come back to bite him except for when he's returning from Paddan Aram. Yeah. But even then it's pacified because his prayer to God, but we'll get there. Essentially he steals it. Isaac gives him the blessing. Everyone learns that he does, and Esau is furious. Isaac dies. No, Isaac doesn't die. He doesn't die for a while.
Yeah, that's because Esau said once Isaac dies, then he'll kill Jacob.
Yep.
Rebecca finds out, and Rebecca's like,
Get out of here.
Jacob, you got to run.
Yep. I think even Isaac says to go to Paddan Aram to his
Yeah,
uncle.
That's right. Isaac sends him there.
Yep. Go to your, which is Paddan Aram would be around Syria.
Yeah, but that's where Terah. No.
Yes.
Yeah, that is where Terah.
Yep.
And that's where Rebecca came from. It's where, yeah.
So this would have been Abraham's family's origin, which makes sense that he would flee to there because people who he already has connections with. It's a land that's familiar to their family and which he has a name already, kind of. But it's also one that is not the land that he's supposed to be in. It's not the promised land. but at this point, the narrative doesn't seem as concerned with that, and the birthright idea is tied with that he will inherit Abraham's promises, the covenant that it was given to Abraham, but that won't happen for a while.
Yeah. Well, and there's also a similar image elsewhere in the Bible continuously, which is going eastward when problems are bad and then coming westward when things get better.
Yes.
Hmm.
Jacob, terrified that he's going to die, runs to Paddan Aram. I'm just going to call it Aram or Syria because that's where it is, roughly. He is 77 years old, I'm pretty sure, by the time he runs.
Which is just buck wild because I don't picture him as 70 years old
Yeah.
at this point in his life.
Oh my goodness.
Especially with what happens later, with
Yeah.
how, like Caleb said, how strong he is and stuff. But
Yeah.
It's just
We're not
being
going to jump right now into literary criticism and all that, right?
No.
We're just going to keep
No,
going
no,
forward.
no. We'll save that. But while he's on the way, he rests at the side of a well that he digs.
His father, his grandfather. Didn't Abraham?
Did
Dig that
Abraham
well?
dig the well?
Well, it's also okay.
Oh,
so
shoot, I just skipped
there's
over that.
actually what's the scholar's name? John Goldingay. Yeah, John Goldingay. He, in his commentary on Genesis, the site where that becomes Bethel,
Yeah.
or Beth Ale,
Mhm.
probably has connections with Abraham. He goes in through like a bunch of different evidence of like different references in Abraham's story and tries to triangulate stuff. I don't know, he has like 2 whole pages on it.
Mhm.
It's okay. In the end, he's like, yeah, the narrator doesn't seem to care to illuminate it, so maybe it's nothing.
You're right. You're right.
Is this the same Bethel that
Yes,
Abraham set up?
May,
the
probably,
stones at?
probably. And that's why it says when Jacob wakes up from his dream, which we're gonna get to, into just shortly.
Mhm.
He goes, God's presence is here, and I didn't know. Holy moly!
Yep.
You know, this is the first dream that occurs within Abraham's family line.
Mm-hmm.
Because even when he says he's put to sleep, it's not specifically mentioned as a dream.
Yeah.
When Abraham has that whole covenant thing.
But probably not the first, dream in the Bible.
Nope.
Weird,
because doesn't the Pharaoh
Yeah,
the
Abimelech,
dream?
right?
Abimelech.
Yep.
Pharaoh.
or is it Abimelech? In
Isn't
Egypt,
Abimelech-
he sleeps and then or it's the Lord
Abimelech
appears
gets
to him.
talked to by God.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I forget how the Pharaoh finds out.
God comes to him, I think I thought it was in a dream, and says, "You're with this man's wife," kind of thing. But
Well,
I could be
we
wrong.
have Bibles.
we do have Bibles.
But
Continue the conversation.
what does he dream about?
Well, this is commonly known as the Jacob's ladder story.
Mhm.
Ladder's a little deceiving here.
Mhm.
You know, the deceiver. It's going to be a little deceiving, but that's a
Okay.
dumb joke. But Jacob, basically, he gets a stone. He lays down at a certain place, as it says. He dreams that he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with the top reaching the heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. The descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I'll bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you."
In your study of this,
Yes.
did you come across the Hebrew word for ladder there,
Mhm.
or ramp,
Mhm.
or flighted
Or
stairs,
stairs. Yeah.
or many-leveled staircase?
We're going to talk about it again.
Absolutely. You can't. It
The
says,
ziggurat?
like with its top in the heavens,
Yeah.
and angels descending and ascending.
Yeah.
Ziggurat.
It's
It's the
Ziggurat.
ziggurat.
It's a ziggurat.
From my research, I didn't look as super into it because I knew that you guys would be loving to talk about it.
Mm.
It doesn't seem to be probably an allusion to a ziggurat.
You
but
don't
more
think
the
so?
idea of one.
Can you
Like
describe the
the-
difference for me, please?
It's not something that's built up to God, as like a mountain or a high place, but more this idea that the angels coming up and down, as if this is a place that God has chosen to come down and go up. There's man's not involved at all in this.
Yes, you're right.
But the intention of a ziggurat to climb up to the meeting place where God would be,
Yeah.
and to be able to come down from the heavens, that God may be coming down from the heavens. That idea is certainly here.
Mhm. Okay.
What's interesting, again, what I found was that the word used for ladder, the Akkadian equivalent word, which is very similar,
Which
in
would
its
be used where
etymology.
ziggurats are actually.
Yeah, and it is the word for that structural staircase on a ziggurat.
Right.
And the way they described the function of the ziggurat was actually they would find a meeting place between heaven and earth, and they would create the stairway for the god to come down.
Yep.
Which matches the event,
Mhm.
because in the Akkadian use was they had the temples of the gods at the base of the ziggurat,
Mhm.
so that the gods could descend down the staircase. The messengers
Yes.
could descend down the staircase.
The angels of the gods.
Yeah, to go to the patron deity's home, house.
House of the Lord.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beth.
The
Oh.
house of God. Yeah. Bethel
Bethel.
means house of God.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is how that gets into when the Israelite nation splits into Israel and Judah, and then they set up their temple in
Mhm.
Bethel. And then they're like, well, this is the place.
Yep.
This is God's house. And then the whole idea of God's like, no, I decide where I come down. Jerusalem.
We also find out that God does kind of actually do a lot of stuff here, because one, this is where Abraham appeared, or God appeared to Abraham
And changed his
Mhm.
name.
and changed his name to
Yes.
Abraham from Abram.
Likely.
Right. Where the well was dug.
Mhm.
This is where Jacob's ladder story, or Jacob's ziggurat, if you want to call it that, happens. Later on, this is also where when Jacob comes back to Canaan, where God wrestles with him.
Mhm.
We'll get to it, but it's the same place. It's very interesting that, and then later on, Bethel becomes the place where one of the high places in which one of the golden calves is put up by Jeroboam. Bethel and Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it Amos that prophesies against it? Is that right?
Sounds right.
I think you're right.
Yeah. It
They are
becomes a big
eventually
deal.
torn. Yeah.
But then the argument is that that might not be the same place, and that house of God becomes generic.
Right.
I
Yeah.
have heard it argued that it's generic when Jacob does it.
Yeah.
I don't know about
I've never
that.
heard that.
Especially because there's the I am the Lord your God, God of Abraham and Isaac
Yeah.
in his dream. But then it's weird then that he doesn't call the house House of Yahweh,
Well,
Yeah.
later on,
assuming that they know God's covenantal name. Assumption. But carry on.
when he does return to Bethel, he renames it, Jacob does, to El Bethel, which is the God of Bethel, or the God of the house of God.
The house of God.
That sure. Which we'll get into. But any more thoughts on this story, the ladder? The covenant is reinstated here.
I have one more connection with the ziggurat from the
I would
Tower of Babel.
love to hear.
God says, "Hey, your descendants are going to be like the dust of the earth, and they will go north, south, east, and west, and be spread across the face of the earth, just like the people in the Tower of Babel story."
Like they didn't
Yep.
do and then were made to do.
So I don't know. It's just big tower where God can come down to earth and go up, at least according to their concepts of God, with a quote unquote portal to heaven, if I can use
Right.
that terminology.
The heavenly temple.
And people are dispersed from. Monkey sees pattern.
Is there also a connection with creation, with the heavenly temple?
I don't think so.
No?
Not that I've seen.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, not with a staircase, but as a meeting place between heaven and earth.
Sure.
Eden would function similarly.
Sure.
But like that would be it. Like that would be as far as I would
Hold
go.
on. If you make that connection and then you go something with election,
Uh,
I feel like there's something there, but I'm too dumb to have a thought in real
It's
time
dangerous
about
to
it.
draw theological conclusions from this part of the story, but yeah, go for it.
Well, I mean, I think what's interesting about this area is we're at the beginning. We're in the book where all theological like strings start forming.
Yeah.
And so I think like we start to see like we start to see all the things connect, but we can't say it is the thing that comes later. It's building up the framework for what comes later. Like the idea of, I think the tabernacle comes from a bunch of these stories where you get the places where God meets with his people, travels with them, blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
We'll do a whole series on meeting places of God at some point.
Absolutely.
Because I'd love to see the connection between the ziggurats, Sinai, Mount of Olives, just like everything.
Yeah, it'd be so
Right?
fascinating.
What
Biblical
was the
theology
high
of high
place?
places.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's
He-
really
The
cool.
biblical theology of good high places.
Good.
Not bad.
There's a few different high places. That is true. But
Oh, and then the Valley of Dry Bones is the antithesis. Not antithesis.
Yeah.
The opposite. Yeah,
I
it's
mean-
the opposite. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
interesting.
The
On Valley of the Shadow of Death, you can do all of those things,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
though God's
Valleys
with me in the
and
Valley of the Shadow
mountains.
of Death. Anyway, we're
darkest valley.
Oh, sorry, Colton. Carry on.
Subscribe to Second Rate Saints if you'd like to read that book.
That's not written.
We will write it.
We will read it one day.
Stay tuned. This quote unquote high place, this meeting place of God, his house. Jacob awakes after seeing this wonderful revelation of God before him, and goes, "I had no idea God was even here. What the heck?" And then he takes the stone that he was lying his head on, sets it up as a pillar, anoints it with oil, and then renames it to Bethel. He is obedient in this case, similar to how Abraham was obedient. And this is shown by him tithing, much like how Abraham tithed. He gives a tenth of all of his things, not out of any obligation because God never tells him to do it, but out of this idea of this is what I do because God has appeared to me.
Mhm.
I'm doing this out of obedience to him.
And the connection there is to Abraham with Melchizedek.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It still bothers me that you said Melchizedek.
It's Melchizedek, man. Come on.
Yeah, come on, man.
Melchizedek.
What do you want from me?
3 out of 4 saints agree. It's Melchizedek.
It's okay. It's not a democracy. Carry on, Colton.
This was never a democracy.
This is the first. This is not the first instance. This is a big instance of Jacob claiming the title of firstborn. Now that he has, quote unquote, stolen it from Esau.
Would you say that this interaction between God and him, for him,
Mhm.
let's say for Jacob, is God confirming to him that he is the one who carries Abraham and Isaac's blessing
Absolutely.
and their inheritance, as explicitly stated by God?
Yes.
Yes.
It is also very heavily tied with this idea of you are fleeing the land of which I was, you're fleeing, quote unquote, the land that was given to you, my land, the one that was given to your fathers. I will be with you no matter where you go, and you will return. That's very heavily tied with this.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting note to point out for those that followed us in the Jonah episode, where there was a lot of like the land was where God was, and right there he's already alluding to the fact that he's like, this is the land that I promised you, but I'm with you wherever.
Yes.
I'm not limited by this.
This next part is important for themes. Actually, the whole book is this whole part is important for themes, but I'm gonna some of them. Jacob's part is really long and full of a lot of interesting things, but obviously we don't have time to go through literally every small thing. So I'm gonna kind of jump over him meeting Rachel.
Okay.
So Jacob arrives to Aram, and he sends out a servant to see if he can find him a wife from his father's house, or from her father's house.
I don't think so.
No, am I thinking of the wrong thing?
I'm thinking. I think he arrives. There's a well. He sees some of his kinsmen, and he's like, "Hey, brothers, what's up?" And they're like, "Hey, not all the sheep are here. We're not closing up shop, and the well's still covered." And then Rachel comes down with a bunch of sheep, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool." Moves the stone off
You
the
are
well,
right.
and
Yes.
then everybody's like, "Wow, he's strong."
Yes.
This has been very dumbed down. Bible.
77-year-old man.
This is,
You're right. I'm thinking of
Deadlifts
the,
a well.
Pretty sure it's Isaac's story where he sends out the. I'm mixing all the patriarchs together in my head.
Some fun research I did on that point was the note that Rebecca comes to them is women would never shepherd in the family.
Rachel comes to them.
Yes, sorry. Women would never shepherd unless there was no sons.
Okay.
So
I didn't see that in my research. That's interesting.
yes, so that necessitates why the relationship immediately goes to marriage talk
Right.
because
Yeah.
Laban found a man.
Who,
Yeah.
as we are aware, probably managed shepherding.
Yes.
And Laban's kind of a bit of a trickster, a deceiver, much like Jacob is.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of back and forth between them in the next few chapters. Laban is his uncle, the one that he was sent to go meet. Jacob, while meeting, on the way to meet him, meets his daughter, like we said, Rachel, who he immediately falls in love with because she is beautiful. However, Laban has two daughters, Rachel, who's the younger, and Leah, who is the older. And Leah, or Leah, whichever one you want to say, is said to have weak eyes.
Sad eyes.
Sad eyes.
Either one.
Weak
I think it
eyes,
says it depends on the translation.
Delicate eyes.
Yes.
Now, when I immediately read this, especially up until like I did research, I always assumed that weak eyes meant that like, oh, she needs glasses kind of thing.
Which haven't been invented yet.
Which haven't been invented yet. So I always picture her with glasses. But it seemed no, I know. Yeah. But
Fair.
weak eyes in this way, delicate eyes, sad eyes.
Mhm.
Now I start thinking of puppy dog eyes, that kind of idea.
Yeah.
Seem to be a very highly prized trait in a woman back during this time. A sign of beauty,
There is some historical backing for that. There's historical backing for both.
which
but
is
eyes
what,
were like the pristine,
yes,
like though that was the sign of beauty.
yes.
Some of those areas, one of
Um,
the signals.
However, Jacob does not love her. He loves
Mhm.
Rachel because
Yep.
she has the figure that is beautiful, which is what he's
Yes.
looking for.
This dude can deadlift a well, you know? He's got
He can, yeah.
I mean, he is about. Yeah, never mind.
He's just a jacked 77-year-old man.
Just running from
This
his
whole
family.
story's-
Have you seen the?
This story's wild, guys.
Oh yeah,
It's
That
great.
dude looks like Liver King. Just
No, I was gonna say like you know the videos of when J.K. Simmons was playing the captain in the Batman movie with the detective. He was playing it in the Batman vs Superman. And there was like videos, there was pictures of him at the gym just jacked with his like long beard. It's like that's Jacob.
So if there was an adaptation of the Bible,
Jacob is played by J.K. Simmons.
that's awesome. That's good casting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's Laban then? Liver King probably.
I don't know who this Liver King is, so I don't want to know. But Jacob stays with Laban. Laban's like, man, this guy's pretty great. Yeah, we're going to introduce you in, and you're going to marry my daughter. However, you got to work for me first. If you work for me 7 years, I'll give you Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, pretty cool, pretty good deal.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, no, that's fine with me. I was going to stay here anyways.
Well, I think isn't it Jacob is the one who comes up with the transaction? I think it's Jacob's the one because he's like, "Hey, you're good. You're my kinsman. You shouldn't work for me for free." And then, what do you want in return? And then Jacob says, "Well,
Yes.
Rachel looks pretty good. I'm wifeless."
Now, to be fair, you say that as if it's a transaction, but it is one of the only romantic kisses ever like
Recorded
described in
other
the
than
Bible.
Yeah.
Song of Psalms, which
Yeah,
is like
but
the
even
whole
then,
thing is that
it's like, is it kissing or is it like, you know, the analogy
kissing
still
or
works.
kissing level 2.
Well, that's not what I was gonna say, but yeah.
Home run. kind
Well,
of.
what's interesting about this is about him picking Rachel
Mhm.
is we've just come off the story of him and his brother.
Yep.
Right. Of the firstborn is the firstborn male is the one that gets the blessing and the inheritance from the father.
Mhm.
With women.
We'll get
Yeah.
to it. First, he does work Caleb was
Yeah.
right. He does say, he's like, should you work for me for nothing? No. If you give me Rachel, I will work for you for 7 years.
Mhm.
So he does. Then Laban gets a little sneaky. And in the dead of night, he gives his daughter to consummate their marriage because he's like, yeah, you can have my daughter. Here you go.
Jacob's probably blacked out drunk.
And there was
Probably.
a ceremonial
And it's-
veil.
Ceremonial veil. It's in the
Yeah.
middle of the night, so they can't see.
They consummate.
They
Wedding
consummate.
thing goes on for a week.
Well, before.
Well,
but
yeah, he finds
wakes
out
up
that it's
in the morning, and he's like, "This isn't Rachel.
think-
this
I
is
think
Leah."
one of my favorite things is the narration kind of shifts in the Bible because it's like, okay, Laban gave. Oh no, he switches out for Leah. This is chapter 29, verse 25. And it's like, hey, he switches them out.
When
But
morning
in the
came,
evening,
there
he
was
took
Leah.
his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into bed with her. Blah blah blah. And behold, in the morning, it was Leah. And
What
it goes
the
on
heck?
back to the normal narrative.
Yeah.
But it's like the narration just kind of switched.
And behold,
Surprise.
Hanani.
And Jacob is pretty upset for
Yeah.
obvious reasons because this wasn't the deal. But Laban replies with this idea of customs. Josh, what were you going to say about the custom?
Oh, just like there's a the firstborn male custom in that culture, there's also a firstborn daughter custom, which is the oldest daughter gets married first.
So I didn't do a lot of research into this. Is that actually true, or is this
Yes.
just something that Laban says?
No, it is legitimately true because what it does is the family was in charge of taking care of the daughters if they did not have a husband.
Right.
And so if the older siblings were less attractive or less capable or physically handicapped, mentally handicapped, whatever, they were in charge of taking care of them financially. And so the custom was to make sure to not shame the older sister and to not give financial burden for what the book calls spinsters, but it's just basically people that don't get married because nobody wants them. Yeah, it's super depressing. The custom was that if you want to get married to this guy's daughters, you have to get married to the first one.
Yep.
But what's interesting is Laban promises him without making that known. They promise it as if it is known that he won't get Leah.
Well, the thing is that there's two deceptions going on by Laban here. There's the he switches Leah out in the middle of the night, and he does not tell Jacob of this custom until after they're already married. Regardless, Jacob's pretty peeved, but he's like, "All right, let's make another deal. I'll get Rachel if I work another 7 years." And he's like, "Yeah, after this week, sure." And so that then happens. At that point, though, Jacob doesn't really love Leah, despite him being married to her for 7 years. He loves Rachel more, and that's kind of a thematic sticking point in this story, because God deals with both women in different ways because of this. We'll get into it, but I'm going to skip a little bit over the whole sons thing, even though it's a very important part of the story.
Like their birthing of sons, and
their
which
birthing
one's
of
barren, and then they.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
We'll skip over it lightly just because it is a very long segment.
Yeah.
And it goes over multiple different chapters in different segments.
Yeah.
And
a lot happens
essentially,
between.
essentially Leah bears him 6 sons in total herself, plus 2 from her servant. Rachel is a little peeved. She's barren. She gives up her servant, who has 2 sons, much like Leah's servant, although gives it first. This sort of seems that it's God matching and showing that, yes, God is seeing her and loving her. However, Rachel is seen again. She bears Jacob 2 sons herself, Joseph and Benjamin. She dies at Benjamin, but we'll get there.
You're skipping over my favorite story, where there's like, hey, there's some fruit by one son, and then Rachel's like, hey, give me some of those, and Leah's like, no, and then Rachel's like, you can sleep
Mandrakes.
you can sleep with Jacob if you give them to me. Okay, Jacob comes back from work.
Yeah.
And,
I bought you with
and
mandrakes.
Leah's like,
my
come
son
over here.
Leah's like, I bought you with my son's mandrakes. Sleep with me.
Mandrakes are also highly related to fertility.
Are they?
Yeah.
See,
I thought they were the things from Harry Potter.
Feels like those crab things in Skyrim.
Mud crabs?
Yeah. Anyway, carry on.
Anyway.
I just really wanted to mention that story because it's
That's an interesting. I don't even know if I remember reading that.
it's weird,
So-
isn't it? It's one of those. That's
It's
when
another
we-
trading of food for something.
This is true.
Yes.
It's one of those things. That was the moment when I looked at you when we were studying in Starbucks, and I went, sometimes the Bible just has.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I know this. I've read this.
Well, no, what's funny about this is now Jacob's the one that's getting sold for. Like this was his trick. This is what he was known for. He was the one that traded food for something, and now his wife is trading food for him.
That's
He must have been so disappointed.
He's like, wait a second.
Well, it
I've
says
seen this
literally
before.
that he was bought. Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah.
Wait a second, I've
Which
seen
I think
this
is
trick
interesting.
before.
I don't
I
know the
invented
cultural stuff behind it, but
Mhm.
surely there's something there. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense. But one connection I want to make, even though it might not actually be there, Jacob deceives his father by going into the dark and disguising himself as another person to get that covenant that he wants. I don't know how much of a connection it is, but Laban deceiving Jacob in a similar way by disguising his daughter to go in to enact the covenant of marriage there, as a binding thing that is there some form of not comeuppance, that's not the right word, but is there a parallel here? Do you guys think? I didn't do much research into it. It's more of a interesting idea.
There's something in actually John Goldingay and Bruce Waltke, which are the main two people that I've read for this episode. Both of them basically say there's something there, but they don't really nail it down. And maybe that's just because it's like funny
It's
pattern.
really loose.
Well,
Yeah.
I think what you're also seeing is from the pastoral sense is God's work is not impeded by their sin. And so in their messy family situations, in their the mess ups of their customs and the betrayals and the deceptions of each other to get what they want for themselves rather than for the other, right? It's just one deception and sin and one up on each other.
Well-
But God's plan through all of this mess is still occurring. Jacob's still getting the blessing. Esau still isn't. He's still getting a wife from inside the family line. He's still going back to the land of promise. Like everything is still happening the way God said it would.
Jacob's being blessed, even though he's kind of being deceived quite a few
And
times.
people are being blessed as a result of Jacob in weird ways.
Yeah.
including
Yes.
including Laban.
Like,
including
We're
Laban.
gonna.
But-
There's a cool, interesting thing about that.
Yeah. Speaking of
Yeah.
deceptions, Jacob has to deceive kinda once again with Laban. He's kind of a bit peeved off at Laban, I'm imagining at this point. He's worked for him for 14 years, but he still continues to work for him. However, the wages have changed. It's not about his daughters. It's now about the herds.
Yeah.
He says he will work for him for 6 more years if he gets some goats. However, Laban's like, well, yeah, whatever. But Jacob's like, there won't be any fighting between us because what I'm going to do is that if there's any spotless goats, you get to keep them all. If there's any that are born in the pasture, you get all the spotless ones. If there's any with blemishes, then I get them. Now, during this time, they'd be bred for being spotless. So these would be the less desirable. The spotted ones would be the less desirable ones.
Yeah.
So for Laban, this is like, heck yeah, that's a great idea. You're going to be doing your job just fine because you're a great shepherd kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's proven himself to increase the flock dramatically.
Well, it's interesting because not only has he proven that,
Mhm.
right? There's this in 30:27. So Jacob's like, I want to leave. Laban's like, hold on, let's figure
Yeah.
something out.
That's it.
And then he goes, but Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord
Right.
has blessed me
Yeah.
because of you. Which is just, anytime the word divination comes up is interesting. It's just him using,
I cut open some animals and I found out.
Yeah.
there's different ways that divination was practiced in the ancient Near East, but it's just basically trying to find out divine will by pseudo magic.
Yeah, by manipulating nature to some
Mhm.
degree.
But it's
and
also,
reading it.
it also is what what's it? Abimelech, not Abimelech. Yeah, Abimelech. I think is the one where it's when Isaac comes in, right, and then comes into where the Philistines are. And then the whole wife thing happens. He sees Isaac and Rebecca laughing, and then he's like, "You're doing
Yeah.
the thing your dad did."
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then he tells everyone, "Hey, nobody hurt them." And then he goes and tells Isaac, "Hey, God will bless me because He blesses you. I've told everyone not to hurt you. You're safe."
Mhm.
But it's interesting because it's the continued pattern of
Similar.
everyone else is blessed when the people in Abraham's line is blessed, which is
Yeah.
the whole thing back, going all the way back to Abraham. The whole world's be blessed by
Yep.
your descendants.
Yep.
And in this case, it's just monetary.
Yes.
Yep.
And also, it's God will bless him even in when he will follow him and bless him in the lands that he's not even going to, even though he's going to come back. It's that promise made directly to him as well as being fulfilled.
Well, and that's also seen further on in when the Israelites are in exile. God tells them to flourish where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they do.
Put down roots, build houses,
Yeah.
get married.
And they do end up making a mark in the places they go. So,
Fair enough, yeah.
Regardless, he makes this deal for 6 years to separate the sheep, whatever, breed some of them, whatever.
Mhm.
Laban seems a little more uninvolved with a lot of this because Jacob kind of secretly sets up by the watering trough some sticks. He
Yes.
strips some sticks, sticks them into the watering trough, and then puts the sheep next to them so that when they mate, they're by these sticks.
yeah.
It's a weird detail that I don't really understand what it means. I didn't have much time to look into it.
Did you look into it?
I've looked into it in the past.
So it was it's like the same as like a home medicine. Like it's not a real thing.
Right.
But it was common for shepherds in that area, even Bedouins up into the 500s, to put sticks painted with the color that they wanted
Want the sheep to be
for the sheep to
Okay.
be, so that when they looked at it, they would and then
conceive
mate
with that,
become
yeah.
that. And it was like this home remedy kind of thing for like mating, and it doesn't.
God uses it. In
Yeah.
other words, it's whether it's
Right,
home
yeah.
remedy, whether it's weird
Yeah.
quasi divination, weird
I
magic
mean, I think
stuff.
the only thing you can actually draw from it is that Jacob intentionally wanted to have more sheep than Laban.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there's
That's really the best part.
And he
can get of it.
methodically, systematically makes
Yeah.
sure that he gets the strongest and Laban doesn't.
Yeah.
there is a hint that God it doesn't say they told him to do this, but God was behind
Mhm.
this specific thing. Later on, when he's about to leave, he says to his wives that he saw the angel of God, not the angel of the Lord, angel of God, come to him. I don't know if there's much of a distinction there, but
I think there is, but okay.
well, regardless, because of all the change payments that Laban keeps doing him, 10 times it says.
Mm-hmm.
Because he keeps tricking him, God said that he would give him all these goats and all of this wealth and stuff because of it, and that specifically he would get these things. And so it does seem that, well, yes, it was God who gave him all of this wealth, but it's not said that it was God who told him to do it this way. It does seem to be an aspect of Jacob sort of taking it into his own hands again,
Yeah.
and deceiving Laban back. That or God told him, but it doesn't say that God told him, so it probably wasn't God telling him.
He does it when he's explaining it to his wives, though. He says God told him.
He says that, yeah. He
Okay.
doesn't say that God told him to do that, just that he would bless him with these
I
things.
see. Okay.
Regardless, he specifically puts all the strong spotted sheep with him, and then the weak ones stay over there, and separates them and breeds them in specific ways so that he gets all the sheep and Laban gets all the bad ones.
Yeah, even though they're pure and clean,
Yep.
they're weak.
Laban, not super happy about this, but it's now gotten to the point where Jacob is kind of a little afraid of Laban.
Mhm.
He's like, ooh, well, I've made myself into a pretty big nation. He's tried to leave a few times in the past, Laban, so he's like, I don't know. I'm going to leave. He asks his wives if he should leave.
They're just like, all the money's with you. I'm
Yeah.
gonna stay with you guys.
Literally,
My
they're like,
family doesn't like me anymore.
Well, it could be
Yeah.
related to the fact that he doesn't have an heir as well.
he does.
Laban.
Oh,
Laban has sons. That's where he put all of his spotted sheep before. Specifically
Yes.
says that.
Yes. Jacob decides to leave. Angel tells him. Rachel and Leah specifically say they agree. Like you said, they're like, yeah, the money's there, but it seems to be more actually because he says that God told them, they're like, yes, we want to be faithful to God. However, they don't just leave. Before they do, they sneak out and leave while Laban's still working. And before they do, Rachel specifically steals his household gods,
Woo!
as in like little statues or something that would be for local gods that he would worship
Yeah,
himself.
that would be their family's gods.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some form of probably ancestral worship,
Likely, but we don't know.
something like that. Either way, not God.
Yeah.
Bad, big bad. They sneak out. They start fleeing to go back to Canaan because they're like, well, it'll be better there. They get to Gilead before.
Which is the east side of the Jordan River.
Yes, this
Yeah.
is before they get to Canaan.
Yeah.
Laban
Laban
catches up.
learns after 3 days that they have left, and he's like, "What the heck? Why'd they leave?" And then gets a bunch of people to go and chase after them. After 7 days of running, they meet up, and Laban is like, "What the heck, dude? Why'd you run away? I was good. If you asked me, I would have sent you off with like trumpets and tambourines."
Lies.
And well, yeah.
I don't believe that.
I don't know if I believe it either. At the same time, though, it does seem that I've seen a lot of people point to that Jacob was not trusting that God would protect him in this moment
This is
because he
true.
did sneak away.
This is true.
But it's not like he just. It's not like he had much reason to
Trust
not
Laban.
yeah, to trust Laban.
Yeah.
Laban's like, all right, you leave. I have every right to kill you. I have every right to slaughter all of your people. But God came to me in a dream. He told me not to. But why'd you steal my gods, man? Like, come on, that wasn't cool.
That's a dirty move, bro.
You know how much those are worth?
Those are mine.
Jacob kind of goes, I didn't steal your gods. You can go and check every single person, and whoever did it, you can kill them. I won't stop you. Now, flashback. Rachel stole the gods, his daughter. But as Laban's checking, Leah's perfectly safe, and she's pretty happy because of it. Rachel, not very happy. She gets onto her donkey, sits on a pack that has the gods in them, and as her father comes, he's like, I'm sorry, my lord, I can't stand up. I'm on my period. Leave me alone.
And he's like, ooh.
He's like, okay, I'm not
Yeah,
going
fair
to...
enough, fair enough, fair enough. And he just walks away.
Yeah. He's like, ew, icky girl stuff, and runs away.
Dad didn't need to know about his daughter's problems.
Well, it was
Yeah.
probably assuming normal cultural stuff.
Yeah.
Is it probably has to do with ceremonial cleanliness
Cleanliness,
stuff?
yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
That would be my guess, although...
That is an assumption.
Where does he think his gods went then?
Well, it doesn't say.
He's just like,
just
not
kinda-
here.
He's like, oh, well, I guess I misjudged you a little bit. Let's make a covenant. So, yeah, like literally, it's like,
make a covenant.
let's make a covenant. I'll stay on this side of Gilead. You stay on that side of Gilead. If you come over here, I get to kill you. If I come over there, you get to kill me. Also, do not mistreat my daughters and don't marry anybody else. Basically, that's the entire agreement.
GG.
They make the covenant, and they separate ways. He leaves the next day after a big meal, and leaves, and that's the end of Laban and Jacob's story. Interesting character.
The rest of Abraham's lineage never comes back into the Bible, right?
Of Abraham's lineage.
Yeah, like other.
I don't know if it does with Laban.
Well, in the form of the nations.
Yeah.
Like
But not like
Edom, Moab,
not like
Ammon.
those
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Ammonites become like a huge thing, right?
Well, yeah,
What is
because like
this?
the Edomites in Obed, like
Mhm.
Yeah.
God specifically refers to them as your brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
But like
Ammonites are
going that far back, like Terah, their relationship with Terah, it becomes Abraham down. I should say Terah's descendants, because like Abraham down, we know,
Yeah.
but that would be Terah down. And I don't think
Yeah.
they're mentioned. In
Well, the
Bible.
Edomites are specifically mentioned as don't kill them because they're your brothers, kind of thing.
Mhm.
When the Israelites, the Hebrews, come back to Canaan.
But that would
But
be
no, but
that would be
the,
Jacob and Esau's descendants.
Yeah, Esau specifically. Yeah.
But that would be that stuff. I'm just thinking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Terah.
But the Amorites would be from Aram. And
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. And
Whether or not that they're those people
I
group.
think
they're under the ban.
I think the Amorites and the Moabites are specifically from Lot's kids born out of the incestuous marriage.
That's right.
And that's why there's such an aversion
Moabites,
to them.
Yes.
At least that's the
Yeah.
biblical presentation of why those people are
Yes.
against.
Interesting connection, but yes. Despite that, now that Jacob has left Laban, he's like, all right, well, we have one more problem. I've been gone from home for so long that my brother has inherited whatever and done whatever. He's going to come and probably not like me. Let's see. Sends out some messengers. The messengers come back and they're like, hey, good news. Your brother is ready to meet you. He's bringing 400 dudes to come and meet you right now.
Oh boy.
Jacob freaks out because why would you bring 400 men to meet someone if not to kill them? At least during this time. So Jacob gets very, very worried and splits off his groups into two people. The first one he'll send forward, and he's like, well, if they all die, then at least we can get out.
Mhm.
But he sends them off, and Jacob is left kind of alone by himself after sending the first ones out, and the second ones are about to go. And this is where he wrestles with God. It should be noted that they are again in Bethel, the place where he left. And here a man comes up to... a man approaches Jacob and wrestles with him in his tent.
What's it say in his tent? I've always pictured it outside for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it says that they're
In
alone.
his tent.
Yeah.
And the man wrestles with him all night. Actually wrestles him. Specifically, it's interesting here because that all night, he's old at this point. I think he's about 130 at this point. He tries to get Jacob to give up. He's like, come on, man, give up. It's almost daybreak.
Yeah.
We need to stop. Jacob refuses to do so until the man blesses him. Now, Jacob doesn't actually know who this guy is. He just seems to be a guy who's like, I challenge you, and Jacob accepts. At least that's how it presents it. No, basically,
wrestling match, impromptu wrestling match in your own home.
Yeah, and Jacob doesn't seem to be winning, more that they're locked completely in stalemate. And so the man touches Jacob's hip and it wrenches it out of place. Now, this is probably the most painful place to get a joint disconnected. It's your hip bone from your hip, I guess. But it seems to be, as written, sort of an act of mercy, but also it is a way for him to end the wrestling. The man reveals himself as the angel of the Lord, and he blesses Jacob with the name Israel. Jacob's name completely changes. Israel means to wrestle or contend with God. It's a bit of a thematic, interesting name because later on, Israel wrestles and contends with God quite a bit in bad ways. But I don't think that's what the text is trying to say here. I don't think it's trying to say, look at how much his people mess with God. It's more this, he has stood up and seen God and wrestled with him and success.
Well, isn't it he names him, but then he also says, for you have wrestled with God and man.
Yes.
Right? And the ambiguity of his original, the person he's wrestling with, first is just a man, then it turns out to be the angel of the Lord. And then it also, so that little, let's say scenario is then maybe how you're supposed to view Jacob's whole life.
Yes.
Is his wrestling with men, but he's wrestling with God, and they're maybe one and the same at like those are people, and because he's been deceiving, he's been always trying to get around to make things happen. He's just been wrestling with people and God and running away and doing it his own way, and it's hard.
This is partly why I've been bringing up a lot of the deceptions of Jacob. That he is taking into, much like how Abraham did when at first he took things into his own hand when he lied to Pharaoh, when he when he saved Lot, when he did all of these things, that he took things into his own hands. Although Jacob's is slightly different because it's not that he's rejecting or not trusting God, but more so that he's wrestling the nature within himself to whether or not he should be obedient or not.
Sure.
At least that's the impression I got from research.
Okay.
Different things say different things. Different sources say different things on it.
Have you guys come across a polemic in this story?
I did not
There's-
specifically.
There's a couple.
Yeah.
There's a couple oxymorons, specifically at the wrestling match, but what's one that you've come across?
No. With the whole wrestling thing.
Mhm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it is not uncommon. There is, in the Hittite ritual texts, there is a story about a goddess Kebet and the king in which the goddess is detained. And there is a discussion on whom will prevail over whom, leading to the request of the king to be blessed by the goddess. But what's interesting is the focus on that story is who has power over who. But the focus that is always presented by scholars is it's not about power, it's about supremacy.
Yeah.
And so in this story, God comes to Jacob.
Yep.
God is the one that blesses him on his own, for his own sake, and not because he was defeated.
Right.
What's really interesting is that they're closer to the Hittite place than ever. Hittites were the ones that formulated the covenants that we do see in that biblical text, that area. So there's already
It's also the two first wives of his brother Esau.
Yes, exactly. The Hittites there. There's a huge Hittite presence, and so it makes sense that something so fundamental to Hittite religion is. I mean, and we're in the book of Genesis. We've discussed this over and over again.
Yep.
God taking the stories of other places.
Yeah, even the idea earlier with the ziggurat. In the same place.
With the same guy.
With the same. It seemed not as
Yeah.
that's not as polemic because it's not referencing a specific story, but it's taking these ideas of culture and making them readily available to the people who are reading them so that they understand a new idea.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a polemic on how God relates with people, his people.
It's not on ziggurats that they build,
Yep.
but one that he chooses.
God comes
and
to
it's
them. Opposite,
and
like
it's
you
not
said.
about power stuff. It's about and it's or
It's
even
about-
supremacy. It's about God actually having arguably a relationship, one that actually
one that he initiates.
Mhm.
And like Caleb said,
No,
almost like probably directly is an opposite of the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Or at least the idea of it.
Yeah. There's interesting parallels that end in opposites. Sometimes it's the same, but it's clearly there's monkey sees pattern.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think if you're looking at Genesis from the mind of Moses, you see Sinai as a true to life, God made a ziggurat.
You gonna write a book called that?
God made a ziggurat.
No. Genesis from the mind of Moses.
Oh, that'd be so good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And just tying everything into how in the world did Moses know about this?
Yeah.
Well,
how would
was
Moses
raised in
view
all
that?
the wisdom of the Egyptians?
Yeah, well, I mean, that would
Yeah.
be the main premise, right? Is
Yeah.
after 400 years, how do these ideas resurface?
Yeah.
Is it oral tradition? Are there people in Exodus that are regurgitating these stories that are, because Moses would have been brought up by his biological mother
Yep.
almost by accident, but by God's providence.
Until he was
but it
12.
seems-
Until he was 12.
Until he was
And then,
12. But that would be the essential time to be taught and learn the ways of your original culture, right?
Yeah.
Like
unless
by the
he
time you're
learns
12, you kind of already know fairy tales, right? Like
you're today, but back then that
in
would
oral
have been
culture, it
important.
would have been more important.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, but I'm not saying that you learn fairy tales when you're young and then they don't matter. It's you learned quote unquote fairy tales, mythological stories, all that stuff for a long period of time, and it was taken far more seriously. And so I don't think it's like your understanding of fairy tales ends in your younger period.
No, I'm saying it happens at least by then.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
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 And
Also,
even-
these stories may come from his wife's family, which we can get into.
The
Yeah.
Midianites?
We can get
Mhm.
into that.
Because Jethro would have had.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The ties.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that or his
we
mother.
railroaded
Either way,
way off, of course.
the
Colton.
one thing I want to conclude, at least with this story of him wrestling with God, is that Jacob says that I've contended with God and seen him face to face and
Yeah.
lived. What a merciful God kind of idea. And he rededicates Bethel,
He renames the place.
and
that
he renames it again to El Bethel,
Yeah.
not House God, but
Yeah.
God of the House of God.
Yeah. Also, Peniel.
Peniel.
Yeah. Which is where did I?
Oh
is
yeah, we're
also
gonna
one
have
of
to
the names-
rush.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
guys. We are.
This is chunky,
Yeah.
and we need to get through it. But
I'm sorry,
Um,
guys.
I mean, if we need to get through all the content, we can stretch it out.
yeah, we are going to talk about the last bit, and then I'll very briefly mention things where Jacob is mentioned, but it's less about him.
Yeah.
But the last important thing, second last important thing, with Jacob as the main focus, is his reconciliation with Esau.
Yeah.
So, again, he was going right. This wrestling with God story happens right around this point, and Jacob kind of changes a bit after this point. Again, this wrestling with God, and then having been blessed by him.
Mhm.
The Jacob separates his family. As Esau's approaching, the servant comes to him. It's like, "Hey, they're like right over the hill. What are you gonna do?" He separates his family into his servants first, Leah and her children second, and then Rachel and Joseph third. But then Jacob goes ahead.
Yeah.
This is again for if they're about to be slaughtered by Esau, the ones in the back who are more important to him can run away. Again, Leah is not as important to him as Rachel, interestingly. Especially since his firstborn would be with Leah. But Joseph is kept in the back specifically.
Yeah.
This comes to a head with Joseph's story and how they're all super jealous that Jacob loves him the most, but whatever.
Yep.
Um,
Guys, this is so exactly the hero's journey.
It's almost like
It's
It's almost like God knows what he's doing.
quintessential
popular
hero's
myths.
journey.
Yeah.
We talked about
He
myths.
returns home with the power he's received from being in the darkest of dark places, wrestling with God himself, and reconciles with his previous enemies.
and he has a physical marker, the limp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He actually goes through apotheosis. Like he meets with God specifically and becomes like part of him, one who has wrestled with
Oh,
God.
jeez.
It's so on the
Well,
nose.
Yeah.
Um,
I've toyed with the idea of reading how much of this parallels. No, I don't. This
Joseph
might be
Campbell stuff?
more. This might be dangerous. What I'm about to say. I don't know.
Okay, thought in real time. This is not what you necessarily believe, but you're thinking.
I
about
believe
Right.
this 100%. Let's hear it.
Is there parallels between the Christian concept of in sin, all that kind of stuff, whatever God has chosen them to be saved, however they go through, they receive blessings, they go through struggle, they go through turmoil,
Mhm.
they've overcome sin, all of that sort of stuff. How much of that has ties to Jacob's count specifically?
I mean, this is where Paul gets election from.
I know. And so I need to, I don't know.
Guys,
It's just
Reformed
Jacob-
theology.
To be fair, though, Jacob is not mentioned very much in the New Testament. I think he's mentioned 4 or 5 times.
yeah, all
Besides-
in regards to
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm just saying it would be interesting
Jacob
to
and
draw
Esau.
some connections, and now I'm wasting your time, and you need to rush through stuff.
No, it's great. It's interesting. We'll talk about it, especially when we talk about election at some point in the future when we do that. But
I'm absolutely going to make the hero's journey about Joseph. Anyways, continue.
Jacob is freaking out. He's like, "All right, brother, do you hate me?" Kind of thing. And Esau comes up to Jacob and gives him a big hug and a kiss. Aw,
Brotherly,
a brotherly kiss.
The
Aw.
second romantic kiss.
That's exactly word for word what I was going to say.
What?
No, that's no good.
the second romantic kiss in the Bible. Oh, guys, that
I
sucks.
think it's more than the second, but yes.
Sorry, Joel, for
any-
stealing your joke.
Anyway,
It's all right.
all that aside, Esau's like, "My brother, it's been so long. How are you doing?" And Jacob's like, hi, bud. Yeah, it's been a while. Esau says, why have you given me where did all these people come from? Why do they keep telling me they're giving me gifts? He's like, well, they're for you, you know? I just want to bless you. He's like, no, I don't need it. And Jacob's like, no, please take it, please. So Esau accepts. Esau's like, all right, come back with me and my men. We'll go back to our father, who's still alive, by the way. He doesn't say that, but he is still alive.
I'd hope so if they're going back
Which is
to
why he hasn't killed him yet.
That is a big point because Jacob is still terrified. He's like, this is a trap. I don't know what's going on. Jacob says, all right, you go ahead and we'll follow behind. He's like, oh, at least let me leave some men. No. You go ahead. And then I'll just, I'm a limp. I'm old. I got to go with my flocks or they'll all die. We'll come after you.
Yeah.
And Esau agrees. Jacob then goes to a place called Succoth. Yes. Succoth. Near Shechem. And leaves his flock and much of his house there and sets up a camp. It seems that a lot of this is to be done so that if Esau tries to attack now, he's got a kind of a base rather than being trapped in the mountains or by the river. He does not trust Esau.
For good reason.
At least that's how it seemed in my research.
Yeah.
Did anybody come across anything different?
No.
Nope.
Yeah, Jacob is still terrified. But Esau is genuine. He does welcome him as a brother. And from this point on, he's just loving. Right after this is a recollection of his line of what comes after, and then the Edomites and where they come from. So it seems that this is a conclusion of that part of the story. At this point, there is a few key events that happen, but I'm going to kind of gently skip over them, although I will talk about them lightly, and then conclude with with Jacob's death, because it kind of closes out large parts of the Bible, or of Genesis, not the Bible.
Bible ends at Jacob's death.
However, if only. No.
It would still
only?
it would still be a great book.
It'd be a good book. Wouldn't have as much to do with me, but it'd be a good book.
Less Jesus, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But after they settle in near Shechem, Shechem himself, the man whom the city is named after, finds Jacob's daughter and rapes her because he loves her.
Because he loves her.
Yeah, that's
the phrase of the year.
That's actually
That's
what they
what
say.
it says.
It says it multiple times. It's
hate-
horrible. But
I mean, he gets what's coming to him.
yeah, Jacob doesn't do anything until his sons come back. But his sons are specifically Simon and Levi.
Yes.
Furious. Is it Simon and Levi or Simon and Reuben?
Simon and Levi.
Simon and Levi. Is Shechem the name of the town and the
Yes,
name of the
guy,
son?
because he's the son of Hamor. Shechem's son of Hamor.
And Hamor is the
He's a
head
super
of
wealthy man. Yeah.
is the head of the town,
Yeah.
and the town is his son's name.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I don't know if it's named after him or if they just coincidentally have the same name.
Or more likely, history gets back written into what the city is.
Yeah. Regardless, the sons are very mad. They're like Hamor himself, the chief of the city, comes and is like, sorry this happened, but he just really loves her. Would you let him marry her?
Oh my god.
And the sons are like, yeah, sure, bud. However, we only are allowed to marry into people who have been circumcised. So all of you have to circumcise yourselves, and then we'll give her to you. And so they, Shechem's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And so all of the men in the city get circumcised. They're in pain because, adults getting circumcised, not very fun.
I don't think
They take
babies getting.
They take a few days off.
They take a few days off. On the third day, they're still in pain. And Levi and Simeon slaughter all the men and take all of their belongings. That
sounds like
revenge.
a get rich quick scheme. Just pillage a city.
I don't even feel like I can say anything about this story.
It's pretty horrible.
It's a story of
also-
brothers standing up for their sister.
Yeah, Jacob
It
also
is.
doesn't really.
Well, he gets upset.
He gets angry, but he also kind of
He does not condemn them.
Yeah, but also he doesn't openly say anything or do much beforehand.
Nope.
He doesn't really. He doesn't
Although-
react in a lovingly fatherly way.
No. Well, he's much in how he dealt with Esau. He's very political about it. He's like, when his sons return, they're like, "Look at Dad, we did all this. Look at all this stuff we got."
That's
He's
right.
like,
That's right.
"Why would you do that? All of the Canaanites and Perizzites, who are the people specifically named, they're going to hate us. And if they try to attack us, we're super weak right now. We don't have any cities. We don't have any defenses. They could just slaughter us all." And he's like, "Well, what would you have us do? Should we just let him do that?"
Defiled
Yeah.
your daughter, their sister. Like,
And that's how
Yeah.
the entire chapter ends. Should we have let him do this? And that's
Which
it.
also furthers the resentment they would have for Joseph because he loves him and
Yeah.
Jacob loves Joseph and not them, and they did this thing. They get reprimanded for standing up to for their sister.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hey, why'd you do that?"
This is also the first of many instances in the Bible where rape is bad. Because there's a lot of people who, I say a lot, there's a good amount of people who are like, in all of the Old Testament and New Testament, rape is not one of those things that's explicitly mentioned as being bad. It's like, well, that's sort of true. However, the implicit parts of many parts of the Bible, this is one of those things where, yeah, no, this is a bad thing. What they did to Dinah is a horrible, horrible thing. And them getting recompense is justified, sort of.
yeah, it's kind of like where people make it's normally tied in with the whole like slavery is not denounced in the Bible,
Yeah.
racism isn't denounced in the Bible, rape
Exactly.
isn't denounced in the Bible, and yet
Well, it's because it's
is.
culturally accepted as being a horrible thing. It's already at this point, it's a horrible thing.
each one of those like things deserves, let's say, an apologetic podcast on. But let's just keep
Yeah.
sailing.
However, after this,
No, we're good.
after this, there is a institution of the Abrahamic covenant to Jacob. The entire covenant is given back to Jacob in much the way that was given to Isaac and much the way it was given to Abraham. Reaffirming to Jacob, "I am your God, you serve me, all of your people, and I will bless all the nations through you." This, again, reiteration, which seems to come to a head in throughout the Bible, but specifically through Joseph, which we'll get to eventually. Rachel dies in childbirth with Benjamin, who is the last of his sons,
Yeah.
and also kind of his favorite, sorta.
Now that
Joseph is his favorite, and then not as much. Joseph kind of is the continuation of the story from this point on.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to talk too much about it, although Jacob is very heavily tied with Joseph's story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to talk too much because we'll talk about it a lot next week when we have one more time, and two, when we're actually talking about the guy it's about.
Yeah.
However, it should be mentioned that Jacob, when he goes to Egypt at the near the end of Genesis, he goes to Egypt during the famine and is about to die. He blesses each of his sons, each giving them a specific individual blessing, which is very different from what he got from his father, but it's different here. It's not a continuation of the covenant, but saying, "Hey, Judah, you're going to rule over all your other brothers. That Reuben and Levi and Simeon guy, I know they're older than you, but who cares about them?" And each of them, I think Reuben's said, you're going to die out and no one's going to care about you, kind of thing. Some of them are very strange.
Yeah.
But he does give very specific blessings to each of his sons. I wish we could talk about it. We could have a whole podcast on each of them. But we can't. And he does, but after this, he does die in Egypt.
Yeah.
It should be noted that his bones are brought back to Canaan.
Yeah.
During the time of Moses.
With Joseph's bones.
With Joseph's
Yeah.
bones. And then buried in the house of their father.
Mhm.
And he doesn't die a sad old man because Joseph is gone away forever. He does meet Joseph
Yes.
again,
Yeah.
which is a good.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he shows him his sons, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a great. Joseph's story's so happy near the end.
Well, yeah. The whole him and Benjamin being
Yeah.
caught up, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna kidnap you from one of your brothers."
hmm
It's a little prank.
And then his brothers
Yeah.
come back, and he's like, "I have to leave." He goes to a different room, balls
Just
his eyes
weeps.
out, comes back, and goes, "Hey, did you steal some a cup of the grain?" That's the wrong order of events, but
Yeah.
You
Whatever.
steal all these mugs from me.
Yeah.
my prized mug collection.
Colton, that
Yes.
was good.
Before we wrap up, Jacob. Jacob is a very interesting individual in the legacy of
hmm
the legacy of Abraham and this idea of Israel as a whole.
Mhm.
Jacob is not Jacob anymore. He is Israel. Israel, the nation, Israel, the people, are descended from this man specifically. He is the culmination of a large part of the Abrahamic covenant, although it's fulfilled through his sons and then his descendants from that point on. But
Well, it appears to be a turning point in, like, you have, God mentions it in Exodus, where it's like, in Israel they are made a nation of many people, right? But it
Yeah.
appears to be Jacob is that turning point from
Yes.
family to nationhood.
And we talked a lot about themes and ideas of themes throughout it. A lot of it's very heavily linked with the story. So going through it, there's parts that are like the covenant, this idea of wrestling with God and betrayal and reinstitution and stuff like that and God being over everything can be somewhat seen throughout the story. We did slightly skip over how God deals with barrenness, that he is the God of life again in this story.
And that's in all three.
It is in all
All
three.
three patriarchs.
Very specifically.
Yeah.
Rachel is barren.
And a reoccurring theme just throughout the Old Testament.
Yep. But specifically with all three patriarchs, what's significant about that? This comes up in a book that we're going to cover in a later episode, Resurrection, Death, and Death. But that God, the one thing he brings up is that God literally creates this nation out of nothing.
Mhm.
Because Abraham and Sarah shouldn't have had kids.
Yep.
So none of this, the whole Israelite nation would have never existed.
Mhm.
And God brings life where there is death.
Yep. Isaac is the same.
Resurrects the family tree.
Yeah, Isaac and Rebecca are the same. It's the same continuation.
Mhm.
And then specifically, yeah, he has Jacob has other sons, but Joseph is the one who saves them during the famine and
Yeah.
through how he does it, that's how all of the history starts. Which we'll get into. But
And the introduction to Egypt.
yes, there's one other fun thing I want to talk about with Jacob, and that's how he's kind of interpreted in other, like, in the New Testament. We talked a little bit about election, and how because Jacob was loved, Esau was hated. It's sort of an allusion to how God chose him for creation, much like Romans says, and the vessel of destruction that is Esau. That God chooses who he wants to succeed. It's not by birthright. It's not by them earning it. That kind of thing.
Well, and it's I don't know if it's necessarily succeed. Now we're getting beyond the bounds of Genesis, but at least my understanding has more to do with it is God chose Jacob to be his covenantal person.
Yes.
Of how the covenant's going to be brought about. And that comes with blessings and whatnot.
Yes.
It's more specifically about you're the covenantal people.
Yeah, and it's one of the legacies of the idea of Jacob. The idea of, like, well, the nation is his legacy specifically, but this is the more thematic legacy that's in the New Testament specifically, although there's quite a few other things, like, thematically that you can find. The other last legacy item that I want to touch on is more fun than it is serious. How much do you guys know about the Nation of Islam?
I did like a project on it in college, but that was a while ago.
Yeah, Nation of Islam is a sect. It's a political movement and pseudo cult, sorta.
Well, this is not what I did a project on, but
No,
this I do know.
Yeah. The Nation of Islam, people like what's his name? Malcolm X, I'm pretty sure, was Nation of Islam. Louis Farrakhan is Nation of Islam.
Really?
I think so. Or Black Hebrew Israelite.
They're the wildest group.
They are the wildest group. They have a very interesting interpretation of Jacob. Yaqub is what they say, because Yaakov
Hebrew.
is the Hebrew. Yaakov.
Yep.
But Yaqub in Nation of Islam is a bad character. He's not the good character that he's portrayed as in the Old Testament, but this idea of he is the deceiver. They focus on this deceiver idea.
Yeah.
That he learned through alchemy. He learned how to separate germs and stuff within people. No, that's that's
What?
appropriate. The appropriate.
You just wanted to
reaction.
talk about eugenics. That's how you wanted
What?
to go
No.
immediately eugenics. I'm looking at the notes.
I just wanted
here,
something fun
and I
at
see-
the end.
That's not fun, Colton.
What are you talking about?
Oh my goodness.
The idea is that through selective breeding over 600 years.
That's how he did the sheep.
Yes. No. Actually,
Is that
that's
the
what I
argument
was.
they make? Is that he figured out how to genetically breed people?
I think that's
through
the
practicing
connection.
on the sheep
With the
like
sticks?
sheep?
I think
Yeah.
that, yes. I
Oh
think
my
that's
goodness,
the connection.
This is so.
Although this is specifically through the laws of regression and convergence and I
Yeah.
can't remember, but the alchemical idea
Yeah.
that he learned how to separate the brown and black tumors in people.
Oh, I hate this so
This is
much.
dumb.
Humors.
Why are you bringing this up?
It's fun.
Is it?
We can cut this whole section out, or we can laugh about it. But
I don't want to laugh. I'm scared.
essentially, they believe that he did this to create the people who would rule over the spotted and darker people.
Oh,
Yeah. The idea here, though, is that Jacob's name should not really be taken in this direction. It's
really?
Oh yeah. This idea is, well, one, super racist, and two, is not in the
Unfounded
Bible,
in
part of the
anything.
Bible, part of Islam even. Like
Yeah,
Nation of
it's
Islam
made
actually
up.
doesn't have really much. Yeah, it's made up completely.
Like made up
Yeah.
in what the
It's revisionist
40s?
history, something
Yeah.
like that.
Well, what's interesting about this, Colton,
Yeah.
is that
30s. Sorry.
he has the patriarchs, even outside of the Bible,
Yep.
have such people know about them.
Mhm.
Like, even people that didn't go to church know about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yep.
They're just known in different cultures around that area, in different ways, in different stories, video games, movies.
Mhm.
They appear. They're core almost to just human history,
Mm-hmm.
specifically with the three Abrahamic religions. But
Yes.
then, but
We-
just
Western culture.
yeah,
Western culture is huge, and Middle
Yes.
Eastern too.
yeah.
That's cool, but he's not the inventor of white people.
No, Jacob is not the inventor of
Right.
white people.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing: you can say that about Solomon, you can say that about Jesus, even, but that doesn't matter if it's not true.
No. What I mean
It does
is
if a lot of
that
people believe it, though.
regardless,
But a
of
lot of people don't
how
believe
people
it.
portray him, they have such a presence in the mind of history
Mm-hmm.
that
They're being used as types and ideas for their
Yeah.
own
Mhm.
machinations. This was to bring up just more of the. Okay, I guess my idea of fun's a little different from your guys' idea.
No,
of
like
fun.
I think it's interesting. I honestly do. It's a topic I did not expect to approach in this episode.
Yeah, it's
So-
it was only because of this weird connection
Yeah.
with Nation of Islam to Jacob that I thought was worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Although it should be dismissed pretty much out of hand
and
because, well, one, eugenics bad, and
Well-
two, it's not part of the
well,
Bible.
and their constant reference to him as deceiver. That's not like people often talk about how evil and manipulative of a man Jacob was.
Yep.
When the story is not about how manipulative he was, yes, he was deceptive, but how faithful God is, like with Abraham and Isaac,
Mhm.
carrying the covenant promise through the people he chooses, regardless of the sinful state that they're in.
I love it.
And
we are longer
yeah.
than we should be.
Yes.
And so, with Josh's summary there,
yes.
I'm gonna toss it over to Joel, who's gonna end it here. But
Yeah.
what else are we doing? We do some like polls on Instagram sometimes.
Yeah, so one of the things that we are going to be doing more often is polls on Instagram and on YouTube. So the more we get into all of these different topics, we even said during this podcast, oh wow, we need to have a podcast episode on each one of these things. Like, oh my goodness, we could separate these in all their own categories. Well, you can be part of making that decision. So as we put out topics or suggestions, or even if you email us suggestions for podcast ideas, we're going to run out of topics at some point. So we'd love to hear you,
Yeah.
have some input on that.
Yeah, and more importantly, we want to hear what people want to listen about.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Well,
So-
and to this point, we've talked about we're going to put the poll out,
Mhm.
and then at the end of April, the last episode in April is
Mhm.
going to be we're going to do the episode that the people vote on the poll.
Have we talked about this?
Yeah, we've talked about this.
I think this might have just been the general meeting of Josh.
No, we talked about like
the ecumenical council of just Josh.
No, because I asked you how
Very
easy is it to
reformed.
put out a poll where we
Yeah.
give them 2 topic options, and then whichever one they vote for, because then it gets them involved in
Yeah.
the topics we create.
Okay, the poll's not the issue. It's the making
Yeah.
sure it's out by the end of April. But yeah,
We're gonna have a second ecumenical council with all the saints.
Third,
yeah.
Did you have another one that we didn't know about?
this was the second. The first one was the original conversation. This is the second. We need to have a third.
I feel like I'm the Oriental Church and I wasn't invited.
Maybe.
You're not invited.
Hey, let's
Caleb.
can you,
He was my ride here. That's the only reason he's here.
let's just end
Let-
it.
let's-
Thanks for listening,
don't
guys.
edit, don't edit.
No, he's gotta actually talk about
check
social
it,
media.
Check us out at secondratessaints.com. We've got a DM message there. That's how you get in contact with us. Secondratessaints at gmail.com. That's how you email us. Second Rate Saints on Instagram. That's how you Instagram us. We're on Twitter with no posts. And we'll see you there.
Thank you, Joel. Caleb, just end it.
Thank God.